So good morning and welcome back. I hope you rested well. I'm feeling really energized. I think we're off to a terrific start on this conference, and it's going to be just another great day. So without further ado, let me start this morning's program. As you all know, this year's Global Alumni Conference is a very special occasion for Stern and the larger NYU community. The establishment of NYU Shanghai marks the university's commitment to be a truly global institution. Stern is excited to engage and play an important role in business education in both China and Asia broadly, as we said yesterday, to teach and to learn. With excitement building, as NYU Shanghai welcomes the inaugural freshman class this year, we're extremely fortunate to have the leaders of NYU Shanghai here today to share their vision for the school. I would like now to welcome Stern's own Eitan Zemel, Professor and Vice Dean for Global and Executive Programs for Stern, as well as the inaugural Dean of Business and Engineering for NYU Shanghai. Eitan wears many hats and he wears them all well. Eitan directs global degree programs for senior executives around the world. He fosters connections between Stern and NYU Shanghai in his dual role, and he deepens corporate relationships through executive education. Under Eitan's distinguished leadership, Global Degree Programs leads the frontier of innovation in pedagogy and technology-assisted learning for Stern, with great potential for broader application at NYU. In other words, Eitan is also Dean of Experimentation and Innovation. So this opportunity to teach and learn between NYU Stern and NYU Shanghai to apply these global degree programs that Eitan has been so skillful in developing is something that excites us very much. And so I'd now like to turn the floor over to my distinguished colleague, Eitan Zemel, who will introduce the panel for today. Thank you, Eitan.
Thank you, Peter. And thanks also in advance to all our panelists. Chancellor YU and Vice Chancellor Lehman of NYU Shanghai are here with us. President Chen and Chairman Tong of ECNU. Ken Miller, the chair of the NYU Shanghai Advisory Board, and our first professor in the area of business at NYU Shanghai, Yi Chen. We'll introduce each one of the panelists in more detail as the session progresses, but we want to thank them in advance. And finally, of course, thank you all, the audience, for allowing us the opportunity to share with you today the story of NYU Shanghai. It's a particularly exciting moment to reflect on this story, because just in front of our eyes we see NYU Shanghai being transformed from an aspirational idea, from a concept, into a very concrete reality with faculty, with students, with buildings and computers and the whole trapping of a university. So I hope by the end of the session you will agree with us that NYU Shanghai is a very big deal. It is well worth doing, and to boot, it's lots of fun. It's a project that has the potential not only to impact directly the people that are directly involved in it, the students and the faculty, but I think the whole university, the school, and indeed the future of higher education in Shanghai and in China. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker tonight, Vice Chancellor Jeff Lehman. Jeff was previously the Chancellor and founding Dean of Peking University Translational School of Law. He was the President of Cornell University and the Dean of the University of Michigan Law School. Jeff is a Renaissance man. He is a lawyer, academic lawyer. His undergrad and schooling was actually in mathematics, and he is teaching a course on the history of human thought. So without further ado, I give you Jeff Lehman.
Eitan is a noted thief. Well, it is just a pleasure for me to be able to participate in this remarkable conference. And it is also a pleasure for me to welcome all of you to our fair city. I want to thank Peter, and I want to thank all of the professionals at Stern for including us from NYU Shanghai in this event. And I want to thank you for giving us some time this morning to introduce NYU Shanghai to the larger Stern family. I have been working in higher education for more than 25 years, as Eitan mentioned, and I just want to say that NYU Shanghai is the single most exciting venture in higher education that I have ever been affiliated with. So I'd like to take a few minutes now to describe the features that make NYU Shanghai so very special, both from the perspective of NYU and from the perspective of China. Chinese law allows for the creation of a special type of legal entity called a joint venture university. The process for creating such a university is enormously elaborate, and it ultimately requires the approval of the Ministry of Education of China. NYU Shanghai is only the third such entity to be created, and it is the only one to be created with an American university as the foreign partner. The first two involve the University of Nottingham and the University of Liverpool from the UK. Our Chinese university partner is East China Normal University, and in the panel that will follow my remarks, you will have the opportunity to meet the leadership of that remarkable university. We also have two remarkably strong and supportive non-university partners, the city of Shanghai and the district of Pudong, where we are holding this conference. YU Lizhong, whom you will meet shortly, serves as the Chancellor or Chinese President of NYU Shanghai, and I serve as the Vice Chancellor or American President of the school. Like any joint venture, we operate to fulfill simultaneously the ambitions of each of our partners. That means we are, in many ways, an institution with a double identity, and it means that we work very hard not to be a schizophrenic institution. From the NYU perspective, we are the third portal campus in the NYU Global Network. So students can matriculate here in Shanghai just as they can matriculate in New York or in Abu Dhabi, and they can graduate with a bachelor's degree that is awarded by the trustees of New York University and accredited by the Middle States Association of Universities in the United States. I am appointed by and serve at the pleasure of the president of NYU, and all of our academic operations are completely integrated into the NYU system. The opening of NYU Shanghai completes a decade-long process of expanding our conception of NYU in a powerfully attractive way. Ours is both the age of globalization and the age of urbanization. Goods and services and people are moving at accelerated rates across national borders, but the network of movement is being defined more and more by a set of ultra-important cities. These cities hold disproportionate economic significance for their nations or their regions. They hold disproportionate cultural significance for their nations or regions. And they are the cities that outsiders think of first when they think of a particular country or region. New York, Shanghai, and Abu Dhabi are all ultra-important cities in this sense. And so are the supporting locations in NYU's global network: London, Paris, Buenos Aires, Tel Aviv, Sydney, and the like. NYU is the only university in the world to have achieved sufficient scale among a set of these cities that it can teach its students and enable its faculty to circulate among them. This expanded conception of NYU is powerfully attractive, drawing to New York University students and faculty who might otherwise have chosen to be at another university. In addition, NYU Shanghai's special privileged role in China means that NYU has a special privileged position here in the world's oldest and most populous country. As Peter Henry has said yesterday and this morning, our presence here enables us both to teach and to learn. From the Chinese perspective, NYU Shanghai is the newest university in China. We are accredited by the Ministry of Education. We award bachelor's degrees that are fully recognized as Chinese degrees. And our faculty who reside here in China are certified as foreign experts. We are a key part of the effort to transform Chinese higher education that is described in an official government document entitled The Outline of China's National Plan for Medium and Long-Term Education Reform and Development, 2010 to 2020. This document is referred to in China as Blueprint 2020. Now, just as NYU hopes that NYU Shanghai can draw exceptional student and faculty talent into NYU, our Chinese partners hope that NYU Shanghai will draw exceptional talent to Shanghai. Even more, they hope that NYU Shanghai will, in its operations, stand as a model of 21st century excellence in teaching and research, and will become an influential partner that will facilitate continuous improvement at other Chinese universities. Happily, we have found that our partners' interests are nicely aligned. And the principle that helps to keep those interests aligned is our desire to nurture among our students the skills that will mark them for fulfilling lives in the 21st century. We believe that this century will place a premium on being multilingual, on being numerate, on being creative, on being intellectually critical, on being effective working within multicultural, multinational teams, and on being sophisticated about both China and the United States. We believe that NYU Shanghai is better designed to nurture those skills than any other university in the world. Half our students will come from China. Half will come from the rest of the world. Every Chinese student will have a non-Chinese roommate, and vice versa. And so you can imagine the tremendous learning opportunities that will exist within our dormitories as well as our classrooms. Our students will receive a liberal education in the arts and sciences, studying in English while mastering Chinese. They will spend at least 5 semesters studying here, and at least 1 semester, and as many as 3 semesters, studying in another one of the ultra-important cities that make up NYU's global network. Our pedagogic methods will push our students to be analytically critical, challenging the received wisdom, challenging their teachers, challenging each other. And we will also be pushing them to be creative, innovative thinkers, the kind of people who will create value by taking prudent risks. Initially, we will be offering our students 12 majors to choose among, distributed across the humanities, the social sciences, the natural sciences, business, and engineering. They won't choose their majors until the end of their first year, but the signals are that as many as 50% of them will elect business and finance as their majors. For that reason, our partnership with Stern is absolutely indispensable. As teachers and as scholars, Stern professors symbolize the best of NYU, and we are thrilled by the way that so many members of the Stern faculty have stepped forward to participate in NYU Shanghai. This weekend's conference beautifully illustrates the synergy that we have felt from day one. The day when our first class of students arrives will soon be upon us, and our dreams for attracting talent are coming true. Our 151 students from China will be the very best in China, and our 149 foreign students will be their true intellectual and leadership peers. Our students have chosen us over schools like Peking University and Tsinghua, Stanford University, and Cornell. Our visiting faculty from NYU New York include people like Paul Romer and Chuck Newman and Dan Stein and Pierre Hohenberg and Tom Bender, extraordinary faculty members. And we have been able to, the proper term is recruit, but informally we say steal, faculty away from other top universities. People like neuroscientist Xiaojing Wang from Yale, marketing scholar Yuxin Chen from the Kellogg School at Northwestern, whom you meet in a few moments. And just an hour and a half ago, I received confirmation that a professor who holds an endowed chair at Cornell will be joining us as well. So we are now going to join with my colleagues to elaborate on some of the special different features of our school. Thank you for welcoming us here today. So if we can activate, oh good, wonderful. I'm now going to speak from down here as a moderator of our panel. To set the stage for this panel, I think I should share some essential facts about the world of Chinese higher education, in which our three panelists are all leaders. China is in the midst of one of the most extraordinary transformations of a system of higher education that has ever happened in human history. In the past 2 decades, the percentage of high school graduates receiving tertiary education in China went from 4% to 27%. In July 2010, as I mentioned a minute ago, the national government published an ambitious set of strategic goals for the next decade, calling for Chinese universities to go up yet another notch in talent and research, in talent cultivation, research, and service to society. So these goals establish the context in which the city of Shanghai boldly reached out to NYU and asked us to join in the creation of NYU Shanghai. So we have with us this morning 3 national figures in Chinese higher education, 3 people who have witnessed and participated in the changes of the past 2 decades and who have unique insights into what lies ahead. At the far end of our table, we have Tong Shijun, the chairman of the University Council and party secretary of East China Normal University. Tong Shijun is a true internationalist, having earned his PhD from the University of Bergen and having done a Fulbright at Columbia University. He is a very serious philosopher. His books that have been published in English include Epistemology and Methodology in the Post-Hegelian European Philosophy of the 19th Century, and Dialectics of Modernization, Habermas and Chinese Discourse of Modernization. He has been widely honored internationally as a philosopher, and he is a great leader of East China Normal University. Next to him is Chen Shun, the 7th president of East China Normal University, and he has just completed his first year in office. Before entering academic administration, he became well known as a serious physicist, publishing more than 100 scholarly papers, most of which focused on magnetic resonance and high polymer physics. And he continues to serve as vice chairman of the Chinese Society of Magnetic Resonance and vice chairman of the Shanghai Society of Physics. He served as the vice president of East China Normal University during the critical period in which NYU Shanghai was designed, and his intellectual vision is evident in all aspects of the school. Last but not least, sitting right next to me is YU Lizhong, my brother, the Chancellor of NYU Shanghai, our trusted partner in everything we do. YU Lizhong served previously as the president of East China Normal University, and before that as the president of Shanghai Normal University. A scholar of environmental change, he is also a true internationalist, having earned his PhD from the University of Liverpool, and he is well known in China as an effective leader of the movement to internationalize Chinese higher education. So I'd like to begin with Chairman Tong. Chairman Tong, in your scholarly career, you have written about how everyone struggles to figure out what it means to live a good life. You have suggested that as we mature, we naturally start out in conversation with people who are nearby, people who are from the same culture. And yet, as you have noted, different cultures have different ideas, different views of what life is all about. So you have suggested that by extending our circles of conversations to people from other cultures, we not only understand them better, but we also have the opportunity to understand ourselves better as well. For more than 100 years, Chinese universities have been among the most eager in the world, probably the most eager in the world, to engage in conversation and partnership with American universities, not only as a kind of mutually beneficial trade, but also so that each of us can better understand our own goals, so Chinese universities can better understand their aspirations as Chinese universities. NYU Shanghai takes this form of cooperative partnership with American universities to a whole new level, one that is helping both ECNU and NYU to think more deeply about how each university wants to prepare all its students for life in the 21st century. For some people, this kind of deep engagement might be somewhat scary, both in the United States and in China. Chairman Tong, do you predict that, at least in China, the NYU Shanghai experiment will be repeated over the next decade? Or do you think that this is kind of a one-off, an unusual experiment that is unlikely ever to be carried out again, at least with this kind of intense ambition?
Very good question. I think my answer is it depends. Yes, if our experiment proves to be successful, and no, if it proves to be a failure. But probably we should. I should answer that question in another way. No, if we know the NYU Shanghai experiment should not be repeated again. If we are so successful that our experiences of international collaboration in higher school are valued and shared across the country, not only probably in China, but also I hope it will also be shared widely in the United States. And no, the NYU Shanghai experiment will not be. Yes, I would say NYU Shanghai experiment will be repeated over the next decade. if our success is limited to such a degree that more experiments of the same level of intensity should be or are considered to be needed. So that's my answer. I mean, quite mixed one. Then, on the other hand, I want to add one more. That is, in a sense, NYU Shanghai is quite unique and hardly repeatable, because there's only one city in the United States called New York, only one city in China called Shanghai, and there are only one pair of most energetic metropolitan cities belonging to the largest developed country in the world and the largest developing country in the world, respectively. And it is unique also because both ECNU and NYU, as the major sponsors of NYU Shanghai, are eager to adapt ourselves to the increasingly globalized and urbanized world. And we are eager to prepare our students for this world, for our times, by means of what can only be available in our times, technically, culturally, and institutionally. And this kind of experiment is unique also because we both sides, I think, want to learn eagerly from the other side its tradition of education in general and tradition of higher education in particular. And we, I think, are both clear of the fact that a tradition can be renewed and enriched only by being reflected upon critically, creatively, and comparatively. Can I say more?
Actually, I'm going to stop you there, and we're going to come back for further elaboration after your colleagues have had a chance to speak. Thank you. Thank you. President Chen, as a research scientist, you have done important work on magnetic resonance technology during a time when that procedure was being revolutionized. More sophisticated mathematics meant that fewer electromagnetic pulses were required to produce an image. More information could be generated by each pulse, and we ended up, therefore, with a superior understanding of what is going on inside the human body. As I mentioned at the outset, we are working today at a time when Chinese higher education is being a technology that is being completely revolutionized. And I'm curious about whether you think that by paying close attention to these changes, we might develop a superior understanding of what is going on inside the body of Chinese society more generally. So if I can frame my question more precisely, many outsiders are curious today about where the process of reform and opening up is going to go during the administration of Xi Jinping and Li Keqiang. Will China continue to become ever more interconnected with and interdependent with other societies around the world? Or will it pull back into a more isolated but perhaps less vulnerable stance? Do you think that the changes that we can anticipate in China's universities over the next decade might give us some perspective on that larger question?
Thank you, Jeff. I will try to answer your question by the language of magnetic resonance. Although the magnetic resonance is not something that can be applied to study the society directly, but we can still use its principles and theories to interpret and to explain the development trend of China. That is, although the individual spin or individual unit is not predictable, the behavior of them is not predictable. If we examine the system as a whole, microscopically, we can find the whole system, the evolution of the whole system always follows some rules. Therefore, the general trend of the system is predictable. The quick development in the past 30 years of China has enabled China to gradually become one of the core members of the international community. The connection of China with the outside world is becoming closer and inseparable. And no one can bear the cost of shutting down this door again. And what we can do, I think, is to just follow this irreversible trend and to adapt to the changes. It doesn't mean we have nothing to do. We can still apply appropriate electromagnetic powers to the society and to make this change happen in a faster and more stable way. I firmly believe that opening, stable, and developing China is not only beneficial to Chinese, but also very important for the whole world, a blessing to the whole world as well. Just like the development of Chinese economy, the development of Chinese higher education has undergone rapid expansion in the past 20 years. Now we have the largest undergraduate education in the world, and the number of graduate students ranks number 2 last year. The scientific research paper published by Chinese scientists international journals also ranks number 2, although the quality is still not very satisfying. Also, like the development of economics, the rapid expansion of Chinese higher education has also led to various problems, including, for example, the quality of overall college teaching is still not satisfying. The teaching has not been given the whole weight it deserves. The teaching methodology is outdated. The creativity, the originality of research achievement is still not good enough. So on and so forth. And we do believe the solution still lies in reforming and in opening up. This is the general recognition of the whole system of Chinese higher education.
Thank you very much, President Chen. Chancellor Yu, as a scholar, you have long been concerned about how environmental changes have implications for major cities. Indeed, about a year before Hurricane Sandy,
yes,
you wrote about how increased...
Yes, hello. Yes. Hi. It's okay. Are you back in New York?
Someone is speaking on the telephone and we are picking it up. Terrific. Chancellor Yu. About a year before Hurricane Sandy, you wrote about how increased sea levels due to climate change had increased the risk of storm surge for port cities like New York. It has been well said that universities are today among the most important institutions within our social environments. And as I noted before, China is in the midst of a process of completely transforming its universities. I'm wondering if you could share your thoughts about what these changes in higher education in China, are likely to mean for China's cities. You don't have to focus on port cities, but on China's cities more generally. So, for example, another way of framing my question is, do you think that NYU Shanghai's impact will primarily be on China and the United States as a whole, or will it have special significance for Shanghai and New York?
My answer is yes. I'm quite sure NYU Shanghai will have a significant impact on both Shanghai and New York. I just want to continue President Chen's comments on the higher education transformation in China. I think there's some key words for this type of transformation. One is the quality, the second is innovation, and the third word is diversity, and the fourth is the capacity to serve the society. So I think NYU Shanghai development for NYU, it's a very important step for the global network university. So I think we feel very happy to be involved in this great experiment. But to China, NYU Shanghai is the important experimental for a university for the higher education reform in the future. So how we can open the door, how we can approach to the high quality education and increase the capability of the innovation and serve the society. So I think the model of the NYU Shanghai can be significant in the future development of the higher education in China. Of course, if we're successful, like Professor Tong Xing said. So this is only concerned about education, because NYU Shanghai is the bridge of the two different education systems, American and the Chinese, in this platform. But also NYU Shanghai is the bridge of two great cities, New York and Shanghai. I do realize NYU Shanghai can be a very good platform for the idea exchange, for the cooperations in different aspects, like the global business education, or the other kind of research and the contribution to our whole society. So I think in the future, Jeff and me, we both have this kind of idea. We should play this kind of important role of NYU Shanghai, be a platform for New York University and for East China Normal University, and for all the universities in Shanghai or even maybe around the world, to use this platform to understand the urban process, the urban development, urban problems. And also we can use this problem, see the transformation of a city, of the society. And there's many topics. I think we can use this platform for the joint research, for the cooperation in the education, or for the other sort of things. So for NYU Shanghai, we are now preparing for some joint research institute. For example, for the urban study, data science, brain study and neuroscience, applied mathematics, social work. We have enormous topic in mind. Maybe in the future we can good to develop all these ideas. But I think at this moment, especially important in this forum, is to develop the cooperation with NYU Stone, especially for the finance and the business and economics. Shanghai, I think, is play a very important role for the economic transformation. So many interesting experience and problems. It's waiting for the scholars to explain and to predict in the future. So I think this is a very good opportunity for both of us to use NYU platform, NYU Shanghai platform, to understand all these questions. So I really want all the scholars from Stone and from the other part of the world and from Shanghai, we can work together to understand the city, understand the economic development in China. Thanks.
So I'm getting a signal that we have just a couple of minutes left before we need to yield to the remaining members of our panel. We will have time to come back and participate in more general Q&A with the conference audience at the end of the panel. But I'm going to just steal a second to see if any of my colleagues would like to add any additional words. Everyone, I noticed as everyone spoke, spoke as an academic, a scholar, and as an academic administrator, which means as an academic, they spoke with a sense of uncertainty and maybe yes, maybe no. And as academic leaders, they also spoke with a kind of encouraging optimism. I just want to ask if any of my colleagues have any thoughts in this slightly uncertain but hopeful environment about how others, participants in this conference or people in the larger society, might join in helping us to reach an answer that is yes, and the most hopeful answer to any of these questions that we're confronting. I'll open it up to any of my colleagues.
Yeah, somebody said that in our times, the only thing certain is that it is uncertain. In order to adapt, face the challenge in this time, I think a good educator should be a good learner first, to be good at learn from our colleagues, our critics from different parts of the world, culturally, institutionally, and as well as geographically. And we should also be good at learning from our own experiences, good or bad, lucky or unlucky, expected or unexpected. Thank you.
Both China, as mentioned by Jeff, both China and the Chinese higher education and the rapid transformation, which will surely bring uncertainties. Uncertainties come as challenges sometimes, but mostly as opportunities. Just like the great experiment we are working on with NYU, and despite of many challenges and uncertainties, we firmly believe that our close collaboration and joint effort will lead NYU Shanghai to an extremely promising future. NYU Shanghai is an opportunity for us to develop. More importantly, I believe NYU Shanghai is an opportunity for us to contribute to a better world.
Chancellor YU?
The future of the world need this type of experiment. So we should work hard. We should make it successful.
Thank you. My colleagues and I will now step off, but we will be back at the end for the more general questions and answers. Thanks.
We'll come to questions at the end of this session. Our next speaker is a leader in the world of innovation and in the world of finance. Ken Miller is the chairman of the NYU Shanghai Advisory Board for Innovation and Creativity. He's also a senior advisor for Tenure Holdings. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Ken Miller.
Good morning, everyone. I am really here to give you a progress report on some studies I'm doing on the subject of indigenous innovation in China. The topic is compare and contrast with the United States, but I'm going to say more about China this morning since I'm here in this wonderful city. I think to start, I'd like to frame the issue on a macro level. This chart here basically shows the problem, frames the issue. The Chinese economic model is running a little bit out of steam. For every renminbi invested in the economy in capital expenditures in 1981, we were getting 5.1 renminbi of GDP. But today, we're only getting 1.4 renminbi of GDP. So as you can see, it's plummeting. And it's making the leadership extremely nervous. In fact, if you look at what we call in Hollywood the backstory of NYU Shanghai, you might say it's based in this understanding by the party of the problem that the country faces as it needs to change its economic model. So, one solution is innovative experiments like this very important one, which I will boldly predict is going to succeed. I've been talking in the last several weeks, after doing lots of reading, to administrators, entrepreneurs, investors, think tank officials, and academics. And in fact, yesterday I was over at East China Normal to visit one of the world-class experts, thanks to Chancellor YU over at East China Normal, who studies this problem. Well, here's one approach to the solution. Chinese expenditure on research and development is soaring. This chart runs out of steam in 2011, but there's reason to believe that if you add the two columns in 2012 and 2013, you're going to get up to 1 trillion yuan of investment in research and development. This represents about 2% of GDP, which they call R&D intensivity. So the United States is just around 3%. Israel is highest in the world at 4.5%, but China is rapidly rising. The issue that is being addressed by the government is what can we do to create some engines of growth for China. And while in the United States we have a big debate about whether there should be an industrial policy, the nature of the government in China is not to have that fundamental question discussed. The only question is, what should the government be doing to stimulate indigenous innovation? And what it is doing is coming up with very detailed plans about how to stimulate innovation in 7 basic industries and 22 sub-industries. And the form it's taking is large numbers of industrial parks, programs to subsidize innovative industries, tax breaks, the so-called 千人计划, which is, and there are many variations on that, which is attracting talent back into the country. However, many observers worry about whether it's going to work. In fact, many predict failure. Some say that you need freedom to stimulate innovation. Others say the bureaucracy will stifle it because these trillion yuan are flowing through, and by the way, I should say, that doesn't include, I don't think it includes much military expenditure on R&D. And so this whole question of the bureaucracy, I had a financier, venture capitalist tell me, we don't want to deal with the universities because they, the money is funneled through old professors who just give it to their colleagues. And then there's the whole question of corruption in China, this 腐败的问题, this whole question of whether it's so easy to make money the wrong way, if you will, that in itself stimulates, suppresses innovation. And then there's the whole theft of intellectual property. This is another issue. If I invent something, it's going to be knocked off. Although I read a study by an East China Normal professor this morning about the number of patents that are being filed by Chinese against other people in China who steal their IP. So it's all changing. Another issue being thrown up against the success of this indigenous innovation is the tremendous focus on the present. I mean, it's kind of amazing when you think about it. An economy at this stage where the GDP per capita is so low that so much effort is being spent to stimulate innovation and creativity. And then I could go on and on and on about all the so-called problems. But there's some amazing things going on that militate in the other direction, that make me actually come down on the side of predicting success by the government and the party. There are over 5,000 venture capital funds in China of varying quality and varying size. I would say there might be 20 to 30 US dollar funds that finance early stage Chinese companies. And there are 40 to 50 renminbi funds of really high quality, comparable quality to what we have in the United States. And frankly, I would say the numbers in the US aren't much different. So when you get success stories like Peggy Yu and Jack Ma and Xu Xiaoping, you start to encourage other people with entrepreneurial tendencies to give it a shot. I remember a time when I would come here where if you suggested to a young Chinese student that she leave the path that was chosen for them, take the Gaokao, go to graduate school, get a degree, go work for a state-owned enterprise, and you said, leave that path, she'd say, but my parents would commit suicide. I can't do that. Today, it's different. These success stories are encouraging risk-taking. I think a huge advantage that China has is the immense size of the market. And I don't just mean that you can sell stuff to a big market, although that's very helpful when you're trying to scale a business. And the internet particularly lends itself to cross-provincial innovation and access to that market. But I mean, each of us carries around a certain amount of capital in our brain. And accessing that capital in a way that is particular to China leads me to believe that there will be a kind of innovation with Chinese characteristics, one which takes advantage of the fact that there is some memorization in the Gaokao. There has to be. It's embedded in the language. But there can be lots of playful creativity around that. And I am sure that the party gets it. And while I think there will be a lot of waste and abuse as this money and resources flow into the system, I think the natural creativity and focus and energy of the Chinese people will create a success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. We'll come back to Jeff with questions at the end of the session.
Our next speaker is Eitan, and we didn't want him to introduce himself, so I just thought I would just say a couple of words about the remarkable Eitan Zemel. Many of you, of course, know him as a faculty member at Stern. A long time ago, I started to try to recruit him to become the first Dean of Business and Engineering at NYU Shanghai. And it was a long process. He said no. He said, no, I love my role as Vice Dean of Global Programs for Stern. And I love Stern, and that's where my heart is. But I didn't take no for an answer, and I kept on pushing and pushing and pushing. And finally, somewhat remarkably, he said, yes, but I also need to stay Vice Dean of Global Programs for Stern. And I thought for a while and talked with Peter about it. And we thought, well, if anyone could possibly do 2 full-time jobs, it's Eitan. There is no more efficient person probably on the planet. And we were thinking, you know, maybe he will find a way to share with our students at NYU Shanghai some of his magical formula for efficiency and focus on process. So Eitan is going to speak with us now about his vision as Dean of Business and Engineering at NYU Shanghai.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm often asked what it's like to work for 2 very demanding bosses in 2 jobs on 2 continents. So I think it's very simple, and I want to give an explanation or an analogy from the world of marriage. So I'm going to tell a story about 2 buddies from college that kind of have a reunion after 20 years, and they are just meeting to compare notes and go over what's happened in the time. One of them happens to be a very successful lawyer. He is a very young partner. He's successful financially, a very important person in the city. And the other one happens to be a professor at the university. And they both talk about their spouses that they knew in the college and everything about the family and all of this discussion. At some point, the lawyer asked the professor, well, are you still with Blair, your spouse? And yes, they're still the same family and children, etc. But recently I found another person, Kim, and I have a relationship with that person also. So actually that story is gender neutral. So it's about the relationship, not about the people. So feel free to interpret the partners in any gender you want. It works in all directions. So, the lawyer looks at a professor and he says, I really don't get it. You know, how do you do this? I get the temptation, and I see the excitement, and I see the desire to do this. But when the heck do you have the time for it? Look at me, I work 60 hours, 70 hours, 80 hours a week. At the end, in the weekend, I come home, and I have to work with John on baseball and with Melanie on the homework, and then in the evening we go with Spasad and we have visitors. By the end of the weekend, I'm so tired, I'm so happy to go back to work. So how do you put a third party into this equation? So the professor said, well, it's very simple. It's about a process. It's efficiency. What do you mean? Says, well, I also work hard during the week. And then on Friday night, I make 2 calls, and I alternate the sequence. So on the first and third Friday, on the odd Fridays, I call home first, and then I call my lover. And on the alternate weeks, I do it in reverse order. Okay, and what do you say? So when I call home, and I say, hey, hi, honey, this weekend I'm going to spend some time with Blair. So I'm not coming home, I'm spending some time with the lover. And then my second call is to Blair. And I call her and say, hey, sweetheart, this weekend I'm going to spend some time at home, so I don't have time to see you. So both of them are so confused, where am I? So I just sneak to the office and I write another paper. So Peter, when I tell you that I'm in Shanghai, all right. I really wanted to share a few words, serious word about my role, my dual role, because I think the two jobs are really two sides of the same coin. And in some sense, it's a concrete example, admittedly one of many, how the teams at NYU Shanghai and Stern work so well together. But before I go to this, just a word about what's going on with business and engineering in NYU Shanghai. What do we plan to do there? So it's easier to think about, perhaps, what we are not doing. So first of all, we are not opening a new business school or at NYU Shanghai or an engineering school. We are also not part of Stern. The degree that we offer is not a Stern business degree. And there is no such degree that students can take, which is called business and engineering. What we are doing is, as Jeff said, we are building a new research-based university in Shanghai. Eventually, our ambition is to build a full-service campus with undergraduate, graduate, and PhD programs in a wide range of academic fields. But NYU Shanghai is currently in a state of a startup. It is crucial that we stay disciplined on the critical path, and we focus on the few activities that are essential to achieve our immediate goal. And the immediate goal for us, the prize, is to set up the undergraduate programs. And in that sense, our educational mission is akin to that of a liberal arts college. So on September 1st, when the 300 students arrive for the first class, they should expect to have to spend the first year together, all of them studying together, where the basis, the emphasis is on broadening the experience and filling the gaps. Then, as the second year progresses, they'll be able to select between 12 different majors. They are listed over there. You can see how they are divided. You notice that there will be 4 majors in engineering, in computer science, computer engineering, electrical engineering, and interactive media technology. But what we want to focus on today is the part over there. There is a business and finance major that was designed by Stern. Jennifer here was part in designing that. That major is designed to give people breadth in business and some depth in finance. And you notice that there is also a major in economics. The reason I lump them together here is because it's sometimes amazing to view things to compare it to the students. So for us, of course, business and engineering and economics are very different things. What we find when we talk to the students is that in their own mind, the two concepts are very entangled. They are not sure what the difference is. So they are thinking about those things in common terms, and it's really up to us to use the first year to actually sharpen in their eyes the difference between them. So business and finance is over there. As Jeff said, we already have a clue as to what they will be interested in, and you can see that this business economic things is the number one priority now for the students, both the Chinese students and the American students. So I want to talk a minute on my role in the global degrees at Stern. At Stern, global degrees play a very particular role with respect to educational innovation. I want to emphasize at the outset that there is a very vigorous and non-stop innovation going on in all parts of Stern. Adam and Rob and their team will be talking about this a little bit later today, about what's going on. So There is innovation with respect to pedagogy, delivery, technology-assisted learning, etc. As part of this effort, the global degree program are particularly suitable to serve as a laboratory for innovation because it's a small and nimble operation. It's akin to a place where you can make a prototype. So it's very easy for us over there to try some ideas, to discover what doesn't work, to perfect what works, and to actually standardize this. Currently, we run 4 global degree programs: the Triumph program, which is joined with LSE and HSF Paris, the Master in Global Finance, which is joined with Edge Coast, the Master in Risk Management, and our newest program, which is the Master in Business Analytics. There is a write-up in your packet about those programs, and I'll be glad to talk to you offline about all those programs. They are all very, very innovative, and we can take this offline. But all those programs share a few innovative features, which I think will be very relevant as we try to implement the academic vision for NYU Shanghai. So I want to talk to you for a second about those 4 innovation, 4 things that we have discovered and adapted as we develop the global degree programs. So the first was referred to by Peter and by Jeff and by all the speakers. We call it teach and learn. With respect to global degrees, this relates to the global aspects of global programs. Rob mentioned yesterday that the world is not flat, contrary to what Thomas referred to the famous book. The world is certainly connected and independent, but every country and every region is different, with its own history and its own culture. So in order to success in business today, our students must be able to operate in a complex global environment and to accept ambiguity. And because they must learn how to do it, we must too, as the school and our faculty. So in all our global degree programs, we stretch the students and the faculty by taking them to different parts of the world. Learning about the world is not something you can do by reading a book on your armchair. You have to go see. We run our programs in New York, in Paris, in London, in Shanghai, in Mumbai, in Beijing, in Hong Kong, all over the world. And the students come from all over the world. In all of those programs, less than 15% of the students come, in fact, from the United States. They are truly global. So they have to learn to work together, and they have to learn to work in different environments. The second point is what I call master and challenge approach. We believe that the key to teaching about innovation is to create a classroom environment in which the students are expected not only to respect and master the knowledge that is accumulated by generations of scholars and practitioners, but are also prepared to seek and challenge every weak point in the argument. So you've got to master what is known and at the same time challenge it. Call it master and challenge. So the key to this is to create in each class in our global program degrees an environment that encourage both mastering the material but also challenging it. And the key is to create a safe environment where failure is actually viewed as an opportunity to learn. The third point is learn and do. The backbone of each one of our global programs is the group project we challenge the students to take what they learn in class and use it right there and then to solve a real-life problem, to improve a process, to start a new business, to make the world a better place. The fourth point is called the triple bottom line approach. We had the whole session on this yesterday where the point was driven here. It's the recognition that for business leaders today, long-term success comes from understanding that all three components of the triple bottom line, profit, people, planet, must be a major part of the equation. And in order to succeed in business, you have to be attuned and serve your multiple stakeholders. So we believe that those 4 points, teach and learn, master and challenge, learn and do, are very applicable to NYU Shanghai. First, every student in NYU Shanghai will be paired, as Jeff said, with a roommate from a different background, from a different country. And every student in NYU Shanghai will be required to travel and operate in a distant land. Second, every class will require the students to actively both master the material and at the same time actively examine and challenge the instructor. It is often said that our Chinese students are not so comfortable in the challenge part of the equation, that they have so many aspects to the teacher that they don't like to challenge. Perhaps we can think that our American colleagues are not so comfortable in the master part of the equation. And so maybe the teach and learn here is master and challenge. And finally, the third point is learn and do. We are keen on implementing the project as part of the teaching, part of the life of NYU Shanghai. My own personal challenge to the first class is by the time they graduate, 4 years from now, they will have produced with the faculty at least half a dozen research, publishable level academic papers, and that they will produce an equal number of startups, meaningful startups, as part of the learning experience here. And finally, the triple line bottom is by embedding the business and finance major in a strong liberal art education, we can ensure that the next generation of business leaders will be responsible custodians of the economic engines that we entrust to them. Thank you. Okay. Our next speaker is Yu-Xin Chen. A year ago, Jeff and I and Peter stood in front of the faculty at Stern, and we made a commitment about what we are trying to achieve at NYU Shanghai, which is to build a faculty group here that will make everybody at Stern proud of what we are doing. And what a better way to start this than by having our first professor, Yu-Xin. Yu-Xin will join NYU Shanghai soon as the first professor, distinguished professor of business. He has spent 10 years at Stern and has been lured by Stern, from Stern to Kellogg. So it's really doubly pleasurable that we'll be able to snitch in from Sally, that was objecting to this quite strenuously, we invite Eugene to come here and talk a little bit about what made him join NYU Shanghai. So, Eugene.
Thank you so much. So it's my great honor to be here and to share you some of my personal story for why I'm coming back to the family of NYU. So I think now we're talking about dreams in China a lot, but actually my own dream, my own American dream starts from Shanghai. So I spent my childhood here in Shanghai in a very traditional and classic neighborhood in the old town of Puxi. And then I went to university here in Shanghai. There I got education, and also I started to think about the world beyond Shanghai, the world outside of China. So I went to US to study marketing. But then in US, actually I started my China dream in US. That's interesting. And that China dream started at the Stern NYU. So I got my first job at Stern NYU. I had my first 2 children at Washington Square Village next to Stern. And also, this was my photo at the Stern website when I joined Stern 14 years ago. I was still young at that time. And there, actually, I started to work on research projects using the data from China. And also, after I had the first 2 children, I started about, okay, what would be the future for them? I really wanted to learn Chinese, to be able to read and write in Chinese and keep their Chinese heritage. So actually, I only gave them the Chinese name. That's one way to kind of persuade them, to know better about China. So there, I start my China dream. But now, actually, NYU Shanghai provides both dreams to me. So, but that's just part of it, because I think either American dream or China dream probably is not enough. Nowadays, in the globalization world, we actually need this global dream. So my global dream began actually in a sushi restaurant. That's an interesting story. So I got my first job offer from Stern back to 1998. So then, I treat my PhD classmate at sushi dinner, right? Because, given that job offer, I thought, okay, their future income is good, so I can borrow from credit card and treat them to sushi dinner. Then during the dinner, one of my Russian classmates actually said that, he said, it's really amazing, because imagine that now I'm Russian, you're Chinese, and we're eating in a sushi restaurant in America. Right? So I was kind of hit by that. So I thought, wow, this is truly the globalization. The true globalization is about globalization of people, not just the products, information, technology, and so on. And then I wish that time, one day, we'll have this kind of true globalization also happen in China. Now I think this comes true in Shanghai. You can imagine in the next year, in the coming fall, we'll have probably students from Abu Dhabi eating at an Indian restaurant with a student from New York in Shanghai. That actually will come true. So, but of course, Shanghai offers more than sushi. Right? Those are my favorite cuisines from Shanghai. So you have chance to have all of them except the crab, because now it's too early for crab. But that's just again part of the story, because I think NYU Shanghai also offers this very unique and exciting opportunity to realize my professional dream. I used to study physics, and then I moved to computer science. Then I applied the marketing program in US. But I think the NYU Shanghai really provides this unique opportunity for the cross-disciplinary research. Because for one thing, we're going to be in the same building. People from all kinds of areas will be in the same building, and we have a lot of chance to meet each other, to have lunch, to really discuss the interesting research ideas. I think interdisciplinary research will be the real source for the innovation in the future. And I'm really looking forward to that opportunity. And also, the leadership of NYU Shanghai has really convinced me and also confirmed with me that NYU Shanghai, the goal is to make the university a truly excellent research university in China. So I think that will be, the dream professionally for me. And also, the dream is beyond, personal and professional goals. Because now is the best of the times in China. Just give you some idea. So this was the subway map of Shanghai back to 1994 when I left Shanghai to go abroad to study in the US. But then in the middle, that's the subway map now in Shanghai. But then the last one will be the subway map by 2020 in Shanghai. So just from the subway map in Shanghai, we can see the dramatic development in this country and also particularly in this city. But I don't want to just give you a complete rosy picture about China and Shanghai, because it is also the worst of times in China. We have the pollution in Shanghai, if you can recognize, and we have a traffic jam, and we have very competitive job market. A lot of undergraduate students, they really struggle to find jobs. You can see this is the job fair in China, and also it's hard to get even safe baby formula. Right? This is also very personal because I have a 1-year-old at home, so I'm also struggling to get a baby formula around the world. But anyway, I think the reason I'm coming back is not just because of the best thing, but also it's because of the worst thing, in China, in Shanghai. Because I think this is really exciting moment and opportunity for me and for NYU Shanghai to really witness the change, at the historical level, right? Because we're really witnessing the history, but beyond that, we're also making the history. Because ultimately, I think the goal of NYU Shanghai is not just about research; it's actually about education, right? About developing the young talents around the world. So I strongly believe this is the right time for NYU Shanghai, right? Because we're building the history, and also anything happening in Shanghai will have significance in China. Anything happening in China also will have significant importance around the world. But people make future, and education makes people. So even though our students may come from very different background with very different style of learning. Like this is like the Chinese students preparing for Gaokao, and those are probably international students. But I think they share one thing in common, that is they are all very talented young people. And so that's our obligation and also privilege to provide the best quality education to them. And I think that's something really I feel extremely excited about. And also I feel honored, and it's my own great privilege to be here and to develop and to work with those young talent people. So thank you for that. And finally, this final slide actually is made by my 9-year-old son, because he also really appreciates this opportunity from NYU Shanghai, so he can come back to Shanghai and then have his own exciting learning experience here. And also, he hopes in the future, after 9 years, he will also be a student at NYU Shanghai. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Xin. We have about 10 minutes for Q&A, so I'm going to like to ask our panelists, Ken and to come join us on stage. And in the spirit of master and challenge, I'm challenging you, the class, to actually respond and ask your questions, or perhaps tell us have questions to the different panelists. So.
Right, Professor Zeman, you already talked a little bit about the components of success, so that's very clear. I'm curious to find out what the Chinese government is thinking. Do you think they have a different set of success criteria for NYU Stern? Or how are they evaluate the performance of NYU Shanghai?
So, especially from the Ministry of Education's perspective.
Maybe I can say a few words about that. I think for the Minister of Education, Ministry of Education, they finally approved the establishment of NYU Shanghai is really want to perform kind of transformation of the higher education in China. I just mentioned some keywords in China, the higher education transform in China. But we need some demonstration or the experimental in different type of the teaching, learning, and the research process. So how MOE think about the success of the NYU Shanghai? I think we should demonstrate ourselves, be a special or be a different type of the teaching learning process and a different type of the research process. So I don't think at a very short period we can appear how good in our research quality. It's difficult to show that. But the most important is we should do some experiment, and we have this kind of capability to develop some type of education. Students will feel happy, parents will feel happy, and the society will be agree. This is a kind of tendency of the education our kids want to carry on. So that is the most important for the short future, the near future.
I like to second this and actually make a little twist on it, because one additional important factor, of course, this is how we think about it, how the government think about it. It's also important to think about what is success in the eyes of our students. What do they think about as a success? And we of course, met already the Chinese student in this experiment. And from my interaction with them, I would say the point that was the most attractive to them was this notion of master and challenge, the challenge piece. All our students could select to go to other universities. They can go to Beijing or to Pudong or whatever, and they have made the decision to come to NYU Shanghai because they don't want somebody to tell them what major to go to, and they don't want to be in an environment where they cannot express their views. So I think that piece to them is a really, really important piece.
There are already 2,700 universities and colleges in China. So the Chinese government is not interested in adding another one. So from my point of view, NYU Shanghai is, again, use my language, is a very powerful electromagnetic pulse to the huge system of Chinese higher education. So what we really care is to what extent the Chinese universities can learn from NYU Shanghai. They want NYU Shanghai to be a unique one.
Please.
Yeah, my name is Bo Liang. I'm a Stern Alliance in 2008. I'm an entrepreneur. Actually, I built my company, come back to China 3 years ago in Wuxi, working composite, carbon fiber composite manufacturing business. So actually, I have a practical question, because in China, I remember the time when I go to Beida University, Peking University. So all the people needed to cross the national level, like a examination, get a high score. How NYU Shanghai to select the new students? Because all the other students use the national level examination. Do you use the SAT or the different things? Because a lot of my friends' child wanted to see. Because right now a lot of Chinese wealth people send children to US for undergraduate. NYU Shanghai would be a really good bridge. So I really wanted to know, maybe I can recommend it to my friends to join. Thank you.
So this is a feature of our double identity as a part of NYU and as a Chinese university. So all of our students from China must complete what's called the common application online. They don't have to take the SAT, but they do have to give us their grades and complete essays and get letters of recommendation. And then, based on those factors, we select 500 to come to Shanghai for what we call Candidates Weekend. In batches of 100, we put them through their paces, group exercises, individual interviews, on-the-spot essays, and a set of opportunities that we have to evaluate the fit that they would have with NYU Shanghai. Among them, we then identified about 125, the first 125, and we offered them admission conditional on their performance in the top tier on the Gaokao. So if you are a Chinese resident, you do have to take the Gaokao. But for this very top group, it's simply a threshold. You have to score in the top tier. How high above the bar you soar doesn't matter. For another group, however, we have another group of 125 where we're going to look at their Gaokao score and consider it along with their other qualifications to fill out the rest of the class. So if you are from the mainland and you want to come to NYU Shanghai, you will have to take the Gaokao.
I think we also can say, just follow up President Chen's talk, our admission process has impact on the national admission process. Because a few months ago, I asked to give a talk to all the university, more 90 university. They have how to self-select the process for the students. I think okay. They realize the process of NYU Shanghai will have a lot of meaning for their process. So some university has already learned something from us. So this year, I think this is quite meaningful for NYU Shanghai to be experimental university, a model universities for the higher education development in China.
Just to add on this, that just as I said yesterday, we stood, Peter, Jeff, and I, before the STEM faculty and made a commitment to them that the faculty that will assemble here at NYU Shanghai will make them proud to be associated with NYU Shanghai. I think we can, not I think, I know, we can make assurance to our alumni, the students that are coming out of NYU Shanghai. You will be very proud of them. So.
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm a reporter from AFP Shanghai, and I'm just curious that how will NYU Shanghai advocate and practice academic freedom, especially after the blind activist Chen Guangcheng's claims that he had to end his studies in NYU because of pressure from China. Thank you.
So when the city of Shanghai came to NYU and invited NYU to come and participate in the creation of NYU Shanghai, one of the first points that was made was that NYU operates as a liberal education institution that requires academic freedom in order to be effective. And from the beginning, there was complete commitment on the part of our Shanghai and our Chinese colleagues to respect the value of academic freedom within our university. You mentioned Chen Guangcheng's assertions that somehow his departure from New York University was influenced by the Chinese government or by the Communist Party. Those assertions are false. They are simply false. He was given a one-year fellowship from the beginning to study at New York University in New York, and that fellowship did come to a conclusion. No one here from the government or the party has ever spoken to me about him and his tenure at New York University in New York. The communications were always between him and NYU in New York. And initially they were a multi-party negotiation with the leadership of New York University in New York. But NYU Shanghai was never involved, and so we have played no role in the end of his fellowship.
Yes, Oda.
Hello, Betty Wong, also an alum.
Could you stand up so I can see?
Sure. Hello, Betty Wong. I'm an alum from Stern, and my question is actually about the expectations for the Chinese students who will be going to New York. I'm curious about what you've learned from Dubai and how that would be impacting what you do with the students here. And is there anything else besides having a roommate that's not Chinese that will allow the students to be more global?
So the Abu Dhabi experience, our students from Abu Dhabi also have this experience of spending the first 2 years in Abu Dhabi and then going to New York or to another campus within the global network for a year or for 2 separate semesters afterwards. And one of the interesting experiences that students there have had is they have become so tightly bonded to one another as part of a small campus that they feel a little bit of separation anxiety as they go to New York and become immersed in the cacophony of NYU New York. And so we will learn from them in terms of thinking about how to prepare our students for the dramatic change in experience that they will have going there. The experience of immersion in learning how to be effective in a multicultural context goes far beyond simply having a roommate from a different culture. Our orientation will last for 3 weeks, and this is going to be, this is for new students, this question about how to be effective in a multicultural environment is going to be one of the themes that infuses our orientation period, and it will be one of the great challenges that we're going to be posing to our students in that period. The greatest challenge that we face as an institution is making sure that our student body of 300 students is one student body and doesn't fragment into 2 student bodies, a Chinese student body and a foreign student body, or 3 student bodies, Chinese, American, and other. And we are going to be putting that challenge directly to our students from the beginning. And it's going to be a theme that we keep revisiting over and over again. We will be stressing the opportunities, the intellectual opportunities that come from engaging with people who perceive the world differently. And there's a wonderful book by a social psychologist named Richard Nisbett called The Geography of Thought that documents the way in which people from different cultures perceive the world differently, the way in which they identify different features of their environment as most salient, and therefore the way in which they draw different conclusions and different interpretations about what is happening in their environment. We'll be talking about works like those in class, outside of class, and if we are successful, if we're going to deliver the kind of electromagnetic pulse that President Chen describes to Chinese society and to NYU education more generally, I think this is going to be a key area for us to be successful.
We have time for one more question, but then our panelists will be with us during break. So if we couldn't get your question, please approach them privately. So we have any questions? Yes?
Sure. You hear me? If you don't mind, I'd like to turn the conversation back to the presentation that Ken Miller gave. Just curious about a particular figure. You talked about the investment in CapEx to return of 1.4 GDP. How does that compare to other countries, and what can China do to improve that number?
I think that the so-called middle income trap is illustrated by that number, and getting over it may involve the elites being very adaptable. I don't have the statistics for other developing countries at this stage at my fingertips, but I believe that sooner or later you reach that point and you have to make changes in the model that got you there, because as you totally understand, when Deng Xiaoping did the reform and opening up, there was a huge need for capital expenditures. But then you get into what's called malinvestment, and you overshoot the runway. And that could be true with universities, too many roads, bridges, and tunnels. So innovation could be one of the keys. The other key will, of course, be moving towards more of a service-based economy. Thank you.
Okay, let's thank our panelists. Please feel free to approach any of us or them during break. Thank you.